Coming up on this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society, we go into overtime in part 2 of the ABCs of Nintendo Sports. It's dangerous to go alone, so the Nintendo Cartridge Society goes with you. Welcome to Nintendo Cartridge Society. My name is Patrick Ellers, and I am joined, as I am always joined, by my co-host, Mark Mitchell. Mark, how's it going?
It's going great. I feel like this would be a perfect opportunity if I owned one to break out the Jock Jam CD volume 1 and just really get down with it. Dun dun dun.
Going
dun,
all
dun,
the way
dun,
back.
Dun 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 dun.
Dun, dun. That's not going to sync up at all when put the episode together. So I apologize for trying to sing with you. Mark, do you remember there was a time a couple years ago, and maybe I shared this picture with you and maybe I didn't, but I was in my car driving behind a Jeep that had a vanity license plate that read Jock Jams.
I have a memory of this because when somebody tells you something so beautiful, you don't
That's right.
forget it. Because I don't know about you, but I see people with vanity license plates, and to me it's like a tattoo where it's I see people with them and I respect that they have them, but I'm like, that's not for me because I don't know that I could commit to a thing. What would be my vanity license plate? I just don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's tough because I don't know. I think you and I both. I think we have obvious brands, and it's probably way easier from the outside to be like, I know what these dorks are about. I feel like we don't want to associate ourselves with any one thing or concept, right?
I think that's very true and very telling.
I know. God, we're the worst. But there's someone in my neighborhood who has a vanity license plate that reads Set Life. Someone
What
who's
does that
on
mean?
set every day. Well, it's someone who works in film.
Is it? Or is it somebody who's a trust fund baby and is just set for life?
Or someone who likes to have a very particular life, just everything set just so.
They like setting the table.
Or is it someone who's really into Sonic Forces and should get on the Sonic Forces borrowing program? They could do that very easily by emailing us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. Here's what the Sonic Forces borrowing program is. You can borrow my copy of Sonic Forces for the Nintendo Switch. I own a copy of this game. I lost it. Now I have another one. And you can borrow it. All you got to do is write to us with your mailing address. And then we send it to you. You play it for as long as you want, or don't play it. You don't even technically need to own a Switch in order to participate in the program. And then you send it back, and the envelope is already addressed, and postage is paid for. It is the perfect borrowing program.
One small thing to add to this is when you write in with your mailing address, you go on a list, and so it is a queue. You should not expect immediate turnaround.
No, great point. And second thing, which I thought you were going to bring up just now, is that there is also a copy of Untitled Goose Game in the mix. It hides inside a Sonic Forces box. There's nothing you can do about it. If you get the goose, you get the goose. You had to return that as well, or not. I don't know. There are no rules technically here. You can do whatever you want. We just ask that you return it. And yeah, it's a perfect program, of course. Mark, what else are we doing that we could use people's input on?
We are perilously close to our 433rd episode of this show. And of course, a feature that we do every week is 433, where we talk about something not at all Nintendo related for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And for our 433rd episode, we're going to do an entire episode of 433s with topics suggested by you, our listeners. And so all you got to do is send in an idea for a 433 of a topic that you would like Patrick and I to talk about for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. And it can be anything. It can be related to anything. Try to stump us. You're probably really sick of us talking about Marvel. So if you want to hear us talk about something else.
You would think that people would be sick of us talking about Marvel and Star Wars, but quite a few suggestions actually still in that realm. So look, I mean, there is an element of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But whatever you want us to talk about, email us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at
gmail.com.
And get those to us by the end of the day on Friday, or it's not a Friday, but February 9th, whatever day of the week that is. I don't have a calendar in front of me. And we will talk about your topic for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, and then someone else's topic for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, and on in that fashion until you and I go crazy on mic.
Tuesday. It's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday. Okay, great. That makes sense. All right, Mark, we have got
Wait,
the
wait,
second
wait.
half of the. Whoa, yes.
Let's say thanks to Edward, Mark, Patrick, and Link for sending in suggestions since Tuesday, and thank you to everybody who has sent them in thus far. We're really excited for this episode. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and no one should look at that list of names, Edward, Mark, Patrick, and Link, and go, wait a minute, aren't two of those guys hosts of the show? These are different Marks and different Patricks. You'll have to take my word for it on that one. All right, Mark, we've got the second half of the alphabet to explore. Let's get into our main topic, the ABCs of Nintendo Sports, Part 2. Okay, so last week we did the easy part, right? We did A through M. And whenever we do these ABCs, these A through Zs, the first part is just easier. It's a more commonly used part of the alphabet. The N through Z I found to be difficult. Mark, did you have a similarly difficult time here?
I did find it to be challenging, but I finished it up today. I feel good about where I'm at. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about these.
So we are starting with N. Mark, I will go first. My N, and stick with me on this long walk because I'm taking us on a little bit of a walk, is North American spin-offs. But specifically, I am referring to a North American spin-off to Punch-Out in the arcade, a little arcade game called Arm Wrestling that was never released anywhere except in North America. It is a Nintendo sanction. It's a you know how they convert like Donkey Kong machines to be like other games. So this is a converted Punch-Out machine, which means it had the screen sort of like on the bottom, and then you actually played off of a reflected surface. And it is an arm wrestling game, and is not good by any stretch of the imagination. But it has the same sort of huge sprite aesthetic as Punch-Out, and one of the characters is his name is Mask X, and he's Bald Bull from Punch-Out, but he's wearing like a luchador mask.
Interesting.
So it exists in the universe of Punch-Out. As far as I can tell, has never been adapted or ported to any other Nintendo platform. But this is a Nintendo arcade staple from the mid 80s.
Yeah, I've never heard of this game before, and it's played with button inputs and a joystick. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and has the same sort of idea as Punch-Out, where you're just waiting for the visual cues of this is when the guy gets tired, this is when he starts pushing really hard, and so you have to kind of block whatever by it's more abstract than Punch-Out, but it's the same basic concept of you have to learn all the cues from what everyone is doing, and that sort of plays into the enormous sprites of these characters.
Man, it's a little bit of a bummer that it's stuck in arcade, because I feel like just in the same way that there was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, I really think there could have been a Sylvester Stallone over the top tie-in if this had been a bigger hit.
I mean, 100%. Mark, I don't know if you're looking at the the wiki for this page or for this game right now, but the characters are hilarious. There's Texas Mac, who is a cowboy, who doesn't wear a shirt. He's just a huge ripped cowboy, and he's wearing a big cowboy hat. There's Kabuki, who's a sumo wrestler. He's essentially E Honda, but in a wrestling match. There's the aforementioned Mask X. There's Alice and Ape 3, which is a monkey. You arm wrestle against an ape, right? But he's being controlled via machine by a little girl named Alice. And then the boss is his name is Frank Jr. He's a Frankenstein monster. You arm wrestle a Frankenstein monster.
This is great.
This game.
These
Isn't
characters,
it amazing?
I keep saying this, but there are still a few downloadable characters yet to be revealed for Smash Brothers, and I think it's time for this arm wrestling game to get its due in the video game library that is Smash Brothers Ultimate.
who among those characters do you think Alice in Ape 3 or Frank Jr.?
I
Who's the pull here?
I like Alice in Ape 3 because I mean, I'm not looking at the nomenclature, but I like that it alludes to the fact that there might be previous apes.
Yes. Yes. 100%. Yeah, it's like Ape 111. It's Roman numerals, right?
Yeah,
I.
so it's like an experiment gone wrong, and it's like finally I got it right with the third one.
Oh man, are the first two apes Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr.?
Do we have to update our ranking of best Kongs to include Ape 3?
I think we do.
All right. My N is NBA Street V3, which is a E3 game, or sorry, EA game from 2005. And the reason why I'm including it on this list is because Mario, Luigi, and Princess Peach were included as playable characters in the GameCube version of this game. So, according to GameSpot,
huh?
So, according to GameSpot, NBA Street V3 was part of a 3-game deal between Nintendo and EA to have Nintendo characters appear in EA franchises. So
okay.
I love this. Here's a quote from GameSpot's original article from 2005, where they reveal that Mario and friends were going to be in the game. And it's from George Harrison, who was Nintendo of America's Senior Vice President of Marketing and Corporate Communications at the time. And this is what he says. Quote, Nintendo's characters have always proved they can compete on the world stage. Now they'll show that they can compete on the streets as well.
Man, I encourage everyone listening to this to go to Google and look for screenshots of this. Because if you're picturing Mario like humanified at all, like you are off base. It is as though someone is in a Mario mascot costume playing basketball against like real basketball players.
And so I was trying to figure out what the other games that featured like Mario, Luigi, and Princess Peach were from EA. The only other one that I could find was SSX on Tour, which is the snowboarding game. And so that featured the same 3 characters. I don't know what the third one was. I don't know if the third one ever like actually happened. But yeah, I think I didn't know about this. If I did, I forgot about it at some point. But yeah, NBA Street V3, you can play as Mario, Luigi, and Princess Peach against your favorite basketball stars from 2005 on 3-on-3 basketball.
I'm looking at a still right now that is LeBron James, Mario, and Peach on the court together. What is happening?
So next is O, and my O is Olympic Games, specifically talking about the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games series.
Mark, we are samesies on this one. I am also Olympic Games.
Yeah, I mean, there were like Olympic themed video games on Nintendo consoles way before this, but now since the series has been going since 2007, we kind of, I feel like I just take it for granted that like, oh, Mario and Sonic are together in a game. And it's the Olympic Games like that, which in a perverse way makes sense, right? The Olympic Games is about people all over the world putting aside their differences, coming together for this one event. And just how the Olympics hopes to like heal some of the divide in the world, so does Mario and Sonic the Olympic Games hope to heal some sort of divide in the video game community, having these 2 heavy hitters in a game for the first time. And then every time since then, every 2 years, they've had a new Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games for the Summer Olympics, for the Winter Olympics. And it's given us the gift.
They took a couple years off, right?
I don't think so. I think they've had
Did we have a 2018 Winter Olympics Mario and Sonic?
I'm pretty sure we did when I was... I could be wrong. But I know they had one for 2016. I know they had a Rio one.
Yeah, that tracks.
And it was for the Wii U. But yeah, like this game, you can play as like there's a lot of Mario characters that are playable. There's a lot of Sonic characters that are playable. It is given us a ton of beautiful like GIF material, like Bowser or Waluigi participating in rhythm gymnastics. I haven't played a lot of these games, but it does make me happy that they exist.
I mean, I think much like the actual Olympics, which end up being a sort of like salt the earth strategy where like the cities that host them end up, being in dire financial straits for a long time. No Olympics LA, check them out. um, that I don't think the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games are um, like ever rise above the like, oh, this is fun, or oh, this is novel sort of level. Like even as collections of like sports mini games, I feel like there are series that even that Nintendo does that do it better. But like I don't think anyone really approaches the sort of zany, again, that crossover energy, right? Of uh Mario and Sonic both like taking on the Olympics at the same time. It's pretty crazy.
And you're right, 2018 did not have a Mario and Sonic game. It's because the Pyeongchang 2018 Winter Games, Ubisoft had the license for games based on the Olympics that year instead of, so I guess it wasn't available for Sega.
Weird that they can just like get in like with they
Yeah,
just get
I
in
don't
there and,
understand.
like, own it all one year. Yeah, that's very strange. Also, I think the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games 2020 is obviously interesting in that there were no Olympic Games that happened in 2020, and now it's either starting to look like they're not going to happen in 2021 either, or that has been finalized. I don't know where exactly
It hasn't
we
been
are on that.
finalized. Yeah, I
Okay.
think, yeah, nobody knows.
Nobody knows. We live in weird times, and Mario and Sonic will be like the only Olympians from 2020, which is a wild reality.
But it does make you wonder, like, okay, if these games were on like a 2-year schedule and the Beijing Winter Olympics presumably will happen in 2022, then like, is the game still like, are they still on that cadence, or has like, who knows? Because I think technically the game for 2022 would be released this holiday season at the end of 2021 if it follows the same cadence as the other games have.
Yeah, I wonder if we should look into this at some point, if is like a sales disparity between summer and winter Olympic games. It probably just has to do with like the popularity of the Nintendo console at the time, right?
Yeah, I wonder. But even if within a generation, like, which is more popular?
So we both had the same O, which brings us to P, and so I go first here. But I wonder, I have two different P's. I have like a main P and I've got a backup P, and I sort of want to discuss them both. I think it's possible that you have also picked one of these P's. So can I actually pressure you to go first on the
Yeah,
P?
totally. So mine is Power Pad. Specifically the Power Pad for world class, and playing it with World Class Track Meet, which is the one Power Pad game that I had when we had a Nintendo Entertainment System. We talked a little bit about the Power Pad in part 1, but the Power Pad was, think of it basically like a like Dance Dance Revolution type controller that you hooked up to your NES, and it had two sides to it. On side A, it's 8 buttons, kind of in like a hexagon type pattern, with like 2 buttons up top, 1 on the side, 2 at the bottom, another one on the side, and then 2 in the middle. And I never owned any games that used side A. I think like Dance Aerobics was one. I don't even know how many were released in the US that used side A, but
it is bizarre that is side A, right? Because side B was the one that like came with the pack-in game, right, of World Class Track Meet.
Well, the Power Pad had both, so it was like you literally just flipped it over. But yeah, like,
I understand that, but it's weird. It's weird that they positioned A as the one that never got used.
I know. Totally. So side B was the one that, like, I used, and that I would have thought was side A. In fact, I did think was side A until I was looking at pictures of it, and I was like, wait a second, this can't possibly be right. But side B, the one you use for World Class Track Meet, it has 12 buttons. I'm
glad we figured this out between last week and now.
Yeah.
There was some debate last week.
So it's basically divided into like 2 sides, with like 3 rows of 2. Really, I guess like 3 rows of 4, and 2 of them are blue, 2 of them are red, going all the way back. And basically, like, the buttons on the ground correspond to buttons on the controller. And in World Class Track Meet, you would run and as you were like alternating legs, it would translate to the movement of the character on the screen. And then if you jumped on the power pad, and so there was no pressure on either button, it registered that as like a jump. So you'd use that for the long jump, the triple jump, and also for hurdles.
Yeah. Which is all like it was all super cool, and like the technology was like very novel, but like it is a far cry from being a functional like fitness thing. Because like when you're running with this thing, you need to, and it's to do well in any of the races, you just needed to push those buttons with your feet as fast as possible, which meant lifting your legs as little as you could as you're running, and you're still doing that as fast as you can, but it does not resemble running in the slightest. Like you
No.
look like a maniac.
Totally. And like when we wanted to go really fast, we wouldn't use our feet at all, and we would just like hit them with our hands as fast as we possibly could.
Yeah, I knew people that did that. I feel like I was always faster with my actual feet. But I was also like, I trained myself to like do that very quickly.
So another interesting thing about the power pad is that if you live outside of the United States, the power pad probably the name doesn't mean anything to you. And that's because
Oh,
the power
what?
pad was actually created by Bandai. And it was released for like fitness games in Japan, for like track games and fitness games in Japan, and I believe in Europe as well. In the US, Bandai originally released it here, and then Nintendo bought the licensing rights to it in the United States, and it recalled the remaining like Bandai like
Interesting.
mat controllers that were in the US and replaced them with the power pad. And so outside of the United States, Bandai retained the rights to it. And so in the Wii era, it actually Bandai Namco brought back this power pad idea, and it was called the Mat controller, and they were the ones who released it worldwide during the Wii era.
That makes a lot of sense. And further makes sense in that one of the other games that I played with the power pad when I was a kid was a game called Super Team Games, developed by Bandai, which is a very like world class track meet esque kind of game, except it all like takes place at summer camp. So like and it's a little bit more fun with its presentation. World class track meet does like all just behind the shoulder sort of perspectives.
It's pretty
Like
ugly.
you're running straight down. It's pretty ugly. But Super Team Games, like everyone looks like an anime child attending a camp. And like it's a side scrolling sort of thing, and like you would have to like switch from the red set of buttons to the blue set of buttons to like run on different tracks to like avoid obstacles and stuff. And I believe it also even used the other side of the pad too in some of the other like little mini games that it presented. It was a neat collection of map pad. Is that what you called it? Controlled games.
Yeah, Mat controller. At least that's what the Mat controller is what it was called when it was re-released during the Wii era.
Man, I did not know that about the power pad, which was going to be one of my P's, but instead I'm going with my alternate P, which, Mark, should not surprise you to learn that I am using this as an opportunity to talk about Pocket Card Jockey yet again. Pocket Card Jockey is a game for the 3DS where you are in charge of horses. You are racing horses, and you have the ability to you play as a jockey, and you meet different managers that can like spend money on your horses, and they can give you money when you do well, and then you can buy like carrots or whatever equipment to make the horse go faster. During the races themselves, you are controlling the horse by playing Hands of Solitaire. That's it. That's the whole game. It goes on for literally forever. You can play it for as long as you want. It is a beautiful game on the 3DS. I am sad every day that there's not a port for Switch. It is my go-to playing game. It's just fun and wholesome, and the writing is great. It's a really great game.
And so the like mechanics of how it works with the horse racing, is it
Yes.
every time you like make a match with the cards that the horse moves like a little closer, and then you have to like clear the whole board in order to
No,
win?
it's every time you go around a curve, and so different courses have a different number of curves. You have to play a Hand of Solitaire, and it's never like a full deck, right? And so like the game sort of has like different challenges laid out. You never know exactly how many cards there are going to be. There's some like wild effects that like certain cards can have. But mostly you're just playing you're just playing like an abbreviated version of solitaire as fast as you can. And if you can clear the hand, that's good. If you can clear the hand fast, that's even better. And if you fail or mess up or make mistakes, then like the horse runs slower through the next like leg of the race.
Oh, got it. And this is Pocket Card Jockey is also it's developed by Game Freak, right? The Pokemon
Yeah.
people.
That's right. Yeah, and it is. I'm gonna say it. A game I like better than Pokemon. Mark, does that mean we'll say then that the queue falls to me to go next?
Sounds good.
We're all out of order. I'm sorry. We worked so hard to get the order right from the beginning, and then I screwed it up. My queue is quick play mode on the Ring Fit in Ring Fit Adventure. One of the things I really like about Ring Fit Adventure is that it has this stupid quest mode to it. This story, this RPG where I am upgrading my shoes and my shorts and my tank top, and fighting a dragon. But sometimes you don't want to do all that garbage. You just want to do the workout, which is, usually when I play Ring Fit Adventure, I clock like 20 minutes of physical activity, but it takes me like an hour to get through that, right? An hour of actually playing the game. You can just cut right to it with quick play. Just play the exercises you want. If you're like, yeah, you know what? I don't want to do any leg stuff today. You can go into quick play and just do the exercise you want to do. It has been a real like an eye-opening experience for me, being like, oh, I don't have to like pretend I'm on some mystical quest. I can just exercise.
My queue is quests talking about RPG elements in sports games.
Interesting.
So in the game,
it's kind of the opposite of what I just said.
So in the Game Boy Color and like Game Boy Advance era of Mario Tennis and Mario Golf games that were being developed by Camelot, they were coming like they were like staggered with console releases. Like rarely were they released at the same time as console releases. And kind of the thing that differentiated them in this era was that the handheld versions on the Game Boy Color and the Game Boy Advance, they had RPG like elements in them. So they included story modes. So, for example, in the story mode for the original Mario Tennis for Game Boy Color, you play as either Alex or Nina, who are new students trying to make their way up the ranks at the Royal Academy for tennis, and their goal is to beat the best tennis player, which of course is Mario. So as the player progresses through the ranks and they gain like experience points, and the player gets to increase their character's ability in different areas, similar to what you would do in an RPG. So the 4 areas that can be improved in that first Mario Tennis game are speed, power, spin, and control. And there are like similar elements in the golf games. And this is something that like we didn't see a story mode return in the Mario Tennis games or any of those Mario sports games.
Certainly not to the same extent. Yeah.
And like there was one in Mario Tennis Aces. There was a story mode, but it wasn't like exactly the same. And fans have been wanting and like clamoring for the return of that like RPG-ish story mode in these Mario Golf and Mario Tennis games. They're kind of like lauded in people's memories as the kind of like apex of those series.
Which I think is, it is one of those things that's lauded by the fandom, and but it's sort of proven to be not just a like rose tinted glasses thing, because that same like dynamic came back in the form of Golf Story, which is even more like RPG based, and that was a big hit as far as like indie games on Switch go, and like there's a lot of anticipation about Sports Story, which should still be coming out sometime this year. So yeah, it does seem like that it's an actual good thing that people want.
Yeah, I loved Golf Story. It was released exclusively to the Switch back in 2017. And
wow.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Sports Story. To me, like Golf Story, a little bit, it reminds me of the relationship between Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon, where it's like, oh yeah, like somebody went ahead and just made that like Harvest Moon game that people like
that they
not like
wanted.
remembered in their
Yeah.
head, but like that they wanted. Yeah, exactly. There was kind of like that back to basics. And I think you're totally right. The Golf Story fulfilled that need for a lot of people.
Also, Mark, in doing some research and trying to figure out what my Q was going to be, I discovered that there is an F-Zero character named QQQ. He's a robot who drives a race car. I don't have anything to say about him. Mark, my R. Or wait, you do R. You go R.
Okay, my R is referee. Before Mario got into to the game with like his own sports spin-off titles,
Yep.
he was making cameo appearances in other Nintendo sports games as like the referee. He's the line judge in tennis for the Nintendo Entertainment System and the match referee in Punch-Out for the NES as well.
Yeah, he's a weird looking Mario, but like he's that is still Mario. And this is like kind of goes back to the idea that Mario isn't just like a character. He's a mascot. He was Mr. Video, right? Like even before like having the name Mario, he's Mr. Video, he's Jumpman. Like you just are supposed to associate him with the Nintendo, with the product, the entertainment product that is Nintendo. And so yeah, they were like putting him everywhere. He's in every Game Boy launch game,
Oh, that's crazy.
and usually as a referee.
I also it always weirds me out a little bit like the North American box art for the NES game Golf has like
Yes.
a human proportioned Mario maybe. I
This
don't know
is
if it's
upsetting.
I don't know if
Yes.
it's intended to be Mario, but it's like
it looks like man Mario.
It
like
does.
human Mario.
yeah, it's like he's wearing a red hat, a red shirt, but black pants, red shoes, and then he has a mustache. I don't know to this day. I don't know if he's supposed to be Mario, but it looks like human proportioned Mario.
Yeah, I mean, I have always believed that is secretly Mario. I guess I don't know if we've ever seen conclusively. And then like after that, Nintendo stops making golf games that don't feature Mario, right?
Mhm.
Like the next golf game they put out is NES Open, which has like an actual cartoony looking Mario on the cover playing golf. Mark, my R is Rusty's Real Deal Baseball. I know this is another game that we talk about from time to time on this show. It is a 3DS game that is free to start, and it is a game where you go to a broken down, beaten down former baseball player named Rusty, who is a dog, and he now owns a sports memorabilia store. And he'll let you play a handful of baseball related mini games. But if you want to play like the more advanced versions of them or play them, on an unlimited basis, you have to pay him money to do it. But one of the amazing things about this game is that you can barter with the dog and actually pay less money for these games if you just tell them you want to pay less. You can also earn rewards within the mini games and like trade those in for like tokens that also like reduce the costs of the individual games. The games themselves are all like sort of fun, just kind of standard like Nintendo mini games, all of which are baseball related in one form or another. But mostly this game is cool just because of its like personality and weirdness. Rusty is such a sad sack. Like one of those weird Nintendo characters where you're like, who got into like the head and the heart of this like washed up baseball player and just wanted you to love him.
I know. I wish like we got a couple of games featuring like Dylan the rolling armadillo, and
Yeah,
I think
and
it's
only one Rusty.
I
Come
think
on.
it's sad. I think it's sad that he languishes. Like let's see Rusty in more things. Remember that like moving out in or like indie game or whatever it was that like Nintendo published on the Switch eShop. It's like let's have Rusty and like Rusty Sun running that
Yeah.
moving company or like that first game that Nintendo published for the eShop where like there are robots of different colors like butt stomping on tiles. No reason that can't be Rusty.
Yeah, why isn't that Rusty's butt stomp? Mark, my S is a little NES game developed by Rare called Slalom. Are you familiar with Slalom
I
on
don't
the
think so.
NES? So, like I said, it was a Rare developed game, and it is a weird downhill skiing game where you take the perspective of like behind the skier, um, and you are just like racing downhill, and obstacles come at you, um, and it's like hard and fast, and the obstacles are too dense. It's like bullet hell, but on skis. And the game has very little personality, but it does have like just the look of it to me is very like evocative of. I think there was a slalom arcade machine at the Pizza Hut that I used to go to when I was a kid, because I just have like the image of this like a track screen in my head, um, and like going in and putting a quarter in and then selecting which mountain I was going to race my way down. There's like a nice like easy one, a sort of medium one, and then an absolutely terrifying one where like the maybe it's just the way like the colors are on it, but it almost looks like a tree, in that like the drop off is like inverted like after a bit, and you're like, how could you even ski down that? But it's a crazy weird little game, and it's super difficult, and I don't like it.
Also, what like a cool artifact in Rare's history. They started making these kind of like strange NES games, and I don't know at what point they like got on Nintendo's radar and they were like, "Hey, do you want like the Donkey Kong license?"
Yeah, yeah, absolutely wild, right? And I mean this is a game that was sold like in the like Nintendo Black Box set. I think most of those games are first party. And so maybe this was like sort of their first flirting with like actually making Rare like a real development partner.
My S is the Seattle Mariners. Yes, the actual baseball team, which Nintendo currently has like a 10% interest in, but at one time had a controlling interest. And I encourage everybody to there's an article on videogameschronicle.com that talks about the time when Nintendo bought a baseball team. But I'll try to give like the best version of the story that I can in a short
Yeah.
amount of time. But before Satoru Iwata was president of Nintendo, the longtime president was Hiroshi Yamauchi, and he's like a notoriously like surly guy. But in 1992, he purchased a 60% share in the Seattle Mariners, but for like political reasons, had to limit his voting interest to 49% because basically the country was and Major League Baseball was concerned with like a Japanese person having a controlling interest in an American baseball team. But the previous owners of the Seattle Mariners were looking to like sell the team and take it outside of Washington. And so Yamamuchi, even though he had no interest in the Mariners, particularly, like he never went to a game. Even when they like visited for some exhibition games in Japan, like he never showed up. But he saw it as a sign of gratitude to like Washington, to like the community that helped Nintendo get a foothold in the United States. Some other Nintendo connections.
I love that. I love the like just being a good neighbor aspect of it. Of like, yeah, no, we're gonna like invest in the community here. We're gonna like be part of the baseball team.
Yeah. And the Nintendo connections like continue to this day. Howard Lincoln, who was the former president of Nintendo of America until the year 2000, is currently the CEO of the Seattle Mariners. And Nintendo still has like that 10% interest, and so they've even in modern day, like in part one, I talked about Ken Griffey Jr. presents Major League Baseball, which was a Nintendo developed and published game for the SNES in 1994. But even in more modern times, like there was a limited edition Mariners DS Lite that you could only buy, I think, at the stadium. They also introduced something called Nintendo Fan Network, which was again for the DS family of systems, including the 3DS, where you could order food at the ballpark and stuff like that.
So cool.
It's just one of those like small, like one of those small, like really interesting parts of Nintendo history.
It makes me wish that they would bring back stuff like that for Super Nintendo World. That like you could walk around the park with your Switch and like order food.
Yeah, they have the like the power up bands, and I'm curious
Yeah, that's
if they will
probably what
have
makes it
some
play.
sort of like NFC connection, like an Amiibo does once you get home with your Switch or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
My T is Tony Hawk Pro Skater for the Nintendo 64. Specifically, I want to talk a little bit about the soundtrack because this was an era of when this game came out was like an era of like buying CDs. You could buy
Totally.
a CD or you could like hear a song on the radio. So some of my only exposure to these songs really were from the soundtrack of this game. And like I never played the PlayStation version extensively. I only had the N64 version. So apparently there are some of the songs are condensed or maybe missing or edited on the N64 version because of memory restrictions, but I didn't have anything to compare it to. So it was totally fine with me.
That's
Um,
amazing.
in doing research for this article, I found this, or in doing research for this, I
This
found this.
article. That's
Yeah.
it's what we refer to these episodes as. Yeah, those articles.
I found this Mike article that talks about the soundtrack from the game, and they have a quote from the band Goldfinger, basically saying that having the
The song
song
Superman,
Superman in this like basically made their careers.
Yeah. No, I mean I was a big Goldfinger guy in like junior high school and high school. And hearing, someone else play Tony Hawk and hearing Superman like come out of their PlayStation, I was like, "What?"
And after this, that song was everywhere. Was used in like TV
Yeah.
promos. Like it really blew up.
Right at the beginning of the pandemic and like when everyone was doing like sort of lockdown music stuff, I maybe even mentioned it. But Goldfinger was releasing like videos of them doing, like isolated like performances of various songs, and I think the first one they released was Superman, and it was great. Mark, my T is TNC Surf Designs Wood and Water Rage. Now, TNC Surf Designs, Town and Country Surf Designs, is a skateboard company that I guess lent their name or collaborated in some capacity with LJN Games to develop a game for the NES that is half skateboarding game, half surf game. And when I say that it is half of one and half of the other, it is literally one level of skateboarding and then one level of surfing, and then it goes back and forth and does it all over again. It's one of those like 1987 something like that NES games that is like feature poor, right? Like does not have a lot in it, but the skating sections you are it's just like a side scrolling avoiding obstacles sort of thing where like the street is desperately under construction. There are holes and cones everywhere. Also ramps. Don't forget ramps so you can get over the bigger holes. And then the surfing part is just you have to like navigate like a big. I don't know surf terms, but like there's a big wave that doesn't go away, and you just sort of have to like work up the momentum as you like go up the wave and back down it, and like get right out of it in the middle so you don't get knocked down. And then it just repeats those two levels over and over again. It is not a good game, but I have wild memories of it. The play there are 4 playable characters in there, and one of them is a monkey. And I'm not saying that it's Ape 3, but it might be Ape 3.
No reason it couldn't be.
His name is Thrilla Gorilla, so I guess that's maybe better.
Man, LJN is like a notoriously bad publisher or developer. So yeah, like they made a lot of games that haunt my memories, including I remember renting this Jaws video game for the NES that like
Where you
never
play as the boat.
yeah, like never understood it, never
Yeah.
understood what you're supposed to do. And maybe it's not that bad of a game, but I just like absolutely did not understand it.
Yeah, I guess looking at it now, it was developed by Atlas and published by LJN.
Oof.
Atlas?
I'm looking this up too, and Patrick, I'm happy to tell you that there is a Town and Country 2 Thrilla's Surfari.
Okay, now that sounds much better than wood and water rage.
But you have to eat your vegetables because you have to
No, that's true.
introduce this cool surfing monkey before you can give him his own spin-off.
So I guess the characters in the game, and the other ones are there's a guy named Joe Cool. There's a Tiki Man whose head
Wait,
is just like a
wait.
giant
The
tiki
cigarette
mask.
camel?
No. It's a different Joe Cool, and it's also not Snoopy, right? And then there's Cool Cat. These are the four characters, and I guess they actually are Town and Country like mascots already, characters that would have been on their skateboard decks and stuff. Which, like, there is something as crappy as this game is, and as obvious as like a cash in as it is, there's something very appealing about like a skateboard company's weird collection of mascots that would normally just be like stickers and stuff showing up in a video game. Like there's something kind of punk rock about that I feel like doesn't happen now. All right, moving on to you, Mark. I know that we've been playing with some kind of like old stuff, right? I've talked a lot of NES games, some like mid '80s Nintendo arcade games. I'm going to take us back to 1967. A Nintendo product called the Ultra Machine. This is the slow pitch softball machine that Nintendo made and sold in Japan. That was it's like a pitching machine that you can hit balls without having someone to throw the balls at you. Are you familiar with the Ultra Machine, Mark?
No, I'm not familiar with the Ultra Machine, but there's so much of Nintendo history before the NES that I don't really have any context for, but Nintendo's been like a toy making company for over 100 years now.
Yeah. Well, and this is one of those things that like Nintendo likes to keep like in their like conscious memory, because the Ultra Machine shows up in various WarioWare games, and in the aforementioned Rusty's Real Deal Baseball. One of the games is you are hitting balls against the Ultra Machine as it pitches them to you. But yeah, it's just one of those cool like weird old Nintendo relics that like only collectors and museums have now. I would love to see one in person someday. I can't imagine anyone is hitting those balls anymore. But yeah, what a cool little piece of like Nintendo history.
That is fun, and you're right. It is fun when those like pieces show up in modern games. Like this is not a modern game, but when we were playing Super Mario Land 2-6 Golden Coins, there's an entire like world or level that's built around like Nintendo's attempt at Lego blocks, basically.
Yeah, that's right. It's also weird.
And I really, at this point, whenever the Virtual Boy shows up, it's essentially that same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
A relic.
And in like 20 years, the Wii U will show up in something.
Yeah,
You'll be like,
yes.
Whoa!
Well, my U is unauthorized.
Ooh.
So, in most of today's sports video games are like officially licensed from the league, like FIFA or like Major League Baseball, the NFL. But that was not always the case. For a lot of these early sports games, the developers would do things like they would use the team city and its colors with player accurate stats and jersey numbers, but they would have altered or like no names at all. You would just be working with like the jersey numbers. Or even when they were licensed by the league, like some early MLB games, or even as recently as the NCAA football series from EA, they would use the team logos because those were licensed, but they didn't have the rights to the players. So they wouldn't, it was clearly and obviously the players, but they just couldn't name it.
Yeah.
Now I feel like the vast.
It's funny that feels smarmy now, but like back in the day, I'm like, yeah, it's fine. But as we get like closer to now, and you're saying like, oh yeah, they're using basically the players' likenesses, and it's like, oh, those that's not good.
Well, especially for like NCAA football, where you're like, okay, the schools are already making so many millions of dollars
money
off of these players, and the players aren't able to like earn anything for it. And so here's EA making a football video game where people are able to play as these characters, except not because they're not allowed to use the name. That's actually why, like, basically in 2013 was the last NCAA football from EA, partly because like a few of the conferences didn't agree to license their like property anymore, and also because we've been having this conversation about like should we compensate student athletes for like like more than 10 years now. I was looking at this article from 2013 in the New York Times about EA stopping development on NCAA football, and they're already talking about the compensation discussion as being old news. So it's like we've been doing this for a really long time, and it's just it's just interesting to see like the history of it.
Yeah. Sorry. Then your V.
Yeah, so my V is Versus, and it's just a general thing. Like multiplayer in sports games is so important. The most fun that I've had playing sports games has always been with other people, and when we get to it, my like W is probably like the prime example of that. But yeah, like the multiplayer is such an important part of these sports experiences for me.
Yeah, well, and not just multiplayer, but like competitive multiplayer. Like, I feel like I'm such a co-op guy in general. Like if I'm playing a game with someone, I probably want us to not be trying to beat each other. But if it's a sports game, then all bets are off. Like, we need to be in competition. Sports are competition. So yeah, I think versus is a super important part of that. Mark, and piggybacking off of that, my V is the Versus system. This is another old school hardware pull from me. So it is a sort of modified NES. It's an arcade system that Nintendo was releasing in the late 80s, that they were able to kind of put out what are effectively NES games as arcade cabinets. And they're a little bit juiced up. They had a little bit bigger like color palette. They were a little bit faster, and they were in arcades mostly to feature multiplayer and competitive games. We see some of those games now on like the NES Switch Online, like Excite Bike Versus, and there might be like a Mario. Maybe it's just Excite Bike Versus.
No, there is. There's the Super Mario Brothers Versus version.
Okay, is that in that collection, or is that like sold separately?
I think it's sold separately.
Okay. But obviously a lot of the two-player versus competitive games ended up being the early NES sports games. So, even though it is basically just putting an NES in an arcade, it's how they were able to sort of like get more of these NES sports games like out there, and get people competing against each other and putting 2 quarters into a machine instead of 1. Which brings me to my W, and I know we sort of talked about this a little bit already, but I gotta give it up for Waluigi. Mark, I know you we talked about Waluigi a little bit in your D for doubles partners. But I mean, what else can you say about Waluigi then? Like, he's too mysterious. We don't know what he's about. He started off as Wario's doubles partner for tennis, and then he's just sort of stuck around. But almost exclusively in a sports context. I guess also a party context. But like Nintendo's reluctance, nay refusal to put him in any sort of like narrative based anything is awesome. Like all he does is party and play sports. And I sincerely hope they never expand on that mythology. As much fun as it would be to like know what Waluigi's deal is or see him in Smash or whatever. No, I just want him playing baseball or like kicking a soccer ball or whatever.
I totally agree. And Nintendo leaves us like strange, tantalizing hints that they know that there's more going on, like the fact that as opposed to Mario, Luigi, and Wario's hats, which have their initial stitched into it, while Luigi's hat just has a sticker, as if he is kind of like an imposter in this Mario scene.
That's right. Like, he showed up, he drew a squiggly mustache on his face, and stuck a sticker on a purple hat and was like, "It's a me."
But I hope we'll never know for sure exactly what's going on in that twisted little mind of his. My W is for Wii Sports. I think that we'd be remiss to talk about sports in Nintendo and not talk about Wii Sports, which is, I think, inarguably the most influential game of that generation.
Yeah.
Not just in the Wii, but also like the 360 and the PlayStation 3. We would see like obviously Microsoft with the Kinect and how that went on to affect the launch of the Xbox One, but then also Sony with their like PlayStation Move. This was like the motion controls and that like the Wii brought, and then the fact that Wii Sports was a pack-in the United States, like it was a game changer in the way that Tetris was a game changer for the Game Boy. Everybody was buying a Wii. Everybody was playing Wii Sports. I think there are probably tons of Wiis in households still that get booted up to play Wii Sports when families get together, when friends get together, because it's a totally approachable, all ages game that's fun to play. And yeah, like it was the blue ocean strategy of that Wii generation. Just like it's the perfect example of it. It launched with it, and it you can't beat Wii Sports.
Yeah, I mean, I think you nail it when you like call out its approachability. Like, yeah, the motion controls are one thing, right? Like everyone can understand the motion controls, but the fact that there are no like characters that anyone has to understand, like it's just you're playing as your Mii's, which are like another fun thing that you can make like with your parents or with your grandparents or anyone. It's fun for anyone to make a Mii. And then like the games themselves are presented as kind of no nonsense, right? Like you just bowl. You don't pick stats, you don't level up, you don't have different bowling alleys. Like you just get down to the heart of it. You just do the thing. Wii Sports, I think, is hugely underrated in its. I mean, the game sold more than like anything, so maybe underrating it isn't possible. But like the way that it cuts out any of the fat around any of its experiences is truly remarkable, especially from Nintendo, which has a tendency to just like add stuff sometimes. Yeah, Wii Sports is tight and wonderful and good.
I also, when we were in June, when we were watching old E3 presentations, it really made me appreciate the approachability and the simplicity of like the Wii's motion controls and the Wii controllers. Melded with Wii Sports from the very beginning. Like I feel like more than 10 years on from the Wii, we take it for granted like motion controls in video games. But like you watching that presentation and then watching the Wii U presentation just a few years later, and the contrast and the simplicity with which they're able to like illustrate the Wii and what makes the Wii so unique and cool versus the struggle with the Wii U makes it so clear at like what like a brilliant and now obvious seeming idea the Wii was, but how like kind of like revolutionary was at the time.
Mark, I'm going to do something a little bit strange here. I'm going to pull in my X for a second because I didn't really have an X. What I did instead was I took the plus sign from Wii Sports plus Wii Sports Resort, a package that would have both of those games in it, and I just sort of rotated it 45 degrees to make an X because I also just wanted to talk about Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort and how the there is a whole line, obviously, of Wii games, Wii Music, Wii Fit, Wii Party, and a couple of other ones. But Wii Sports is a franchise that I feel like they should endure, right? Like it is something that is bigger than the rest of the Wii branding, even bigger than like the system itself. If they were to put out a Wii Sports Switch, everyone would buy it. Everyone would buy it to play with their parents, with their cousins, with anyone who comes to visit. That's there should just be an unending supply of Wii Sports stuff.
I totally agree. It should be like a Mario Kart or a Smash Brothers where we just kind of anticipate getting one every generation. And I worry a little bit that because I think like the Wii and the Wii U generation, I worry that there is like nostalgia for it, but also that Nintendo is a little like tenuous to bring up Wii
Yeah, they're a little
Sports
shy.
because
Yeah.
they're trying to like it's be like, no, like the Switch, we're repositioning it differently. It doesn't have that same like it's for everyone, but in a different way than the Wii was. Because by the end of
Yeah.
the like the Wii era, when the Wii wasn't getting like a ton of games, it had kind of like a bad
Right.
reputation.
Mhm.
And even now, like when you think of the Wii, you think like, oh yeah, like my grandma has one in her like basement, and we like sometimes play when we get together. But it just has a different connotation now, and I don't want that to taint Wii Sports because I think the idea, like you're saying, is something that we should be seeing for every console.
Yeah. Well, and so this was earlier in the episode when I was talking about, or when we were talking about the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, kind of just being like a collection of like sports games. This is what I was talking about. Of like, here's how Nintendo does that better. Is through Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort. Just the Wii Sports series is so much better at presenting sports mini games and them being fun and approachable and accessible and fun.
Totally.
I think I said fun twice and possibly even accessible twice.
It's doubly true.
Mhm.
Should I jump into my X?
Yeah.
Okay, so I also am using X in like the way that you see it on road signs. So I'm using it for crossing, and because I want to talk about cross generation games. So
Ooh.
the Switch has seen a lot of Wii U games, Nintendo first party Wii U games, like ported to it with enhancements, but that's not like an entirely new phenomenon. The first time Nintendo that I'm aware of that Nintendo brought like games from one kind of underperforming console and ported it to a highly performing console was back in 2008 when Nintendo announced a line of GameCube titles that would be ported to the Switch under the banner of New Play Control in
Yes.
North America. And it kicked off in North America in January 2009 with Mario Power Tennis with support for motion controls. And I believe that is the only Mario Tennis game that the Wii got was
Outrageous, by the way.
was that this one that was ported from the GameCube. They added motion controls. I know in the reviews, and not everybody was like a fan of the motion controls, but yeah, like it's just interesting to see like Nintendo kind of repeating the same playbook when it's like, yeah, we have a perfectly good tennis game that was well regarded on the GameCube that nobody played because it was on the GameCube, so let's just bring it to the Wii.
The new Play Control like series of games, or like the set of games, is so strange because like there is Mario Power Tennis, there's Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 2, which my stance on the motion controls in the Prime games is I shouldn't have done that. But like Pikmin and Pikmin 2 are also in that collection, as is Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, which isn't the thing that's crazy about that is that it is taking the control away from the bongo controls, which made it so like novel and unique in the first place. And they're like, no, now you just fake the bongos with a Wii remote and a nunchuck. And you could have plugged that into the Wii anyway because it had the ports for it.
Yeah, it's a weird collection of games. Like Pikmin 2 even, I think, at least in North America, like it went straight to the player's choice line. So you got I think it was immediately
That's
$20.
smart,
Yeah.
Yeah. A good way to move a pretty good game. Okay, so now I'll do my why now. Okay. My why, and this is where at the very end of the alphabet here is where I think I get the most generous with what I consider a sport. I'm talking about Yoshi's Safari on the Super NES. It is one of the very few Super Scope 6 games. Mark, are you familiar with Yoshi's Safari?
No, I've never played it, only with reputation, because like the Super Scope is like the light gun for the Super Nintendo, right? And I never owned one.
Yeah, it is the light gun for the Super Nintendo. I also never owned one, but I had a buddy who did. Hey, Pete. And he never had this Yoshi Safari game though. Which is a weird, judging from the videos of it that I've watched, a weird gaming experience. You are Mario riding on the back of Yoshi, who is, I guess, on safari, but that is perhaps a misnomer. You're just like riding through the Mushroom Kingdom shooting bad guys with the super scope. And the super scope, as far as like light guns go, is bizarre because they didn't want it to be just like a handheld gun or anything like that. It has the form of like a shoulder mounted bazooka, right? Where like it has a button on the top that you have to push and also has like a trigger and like it has to rest on your shoulder. It's very strange. Yeah, that's just this game. You ride on the back of Yoshi. It's basically a first person perspective from Mario's eyes as he's shooting a gun at flying Goombas and stuff.
That sounds amazing. My why is also Yoshi. I wanted to talk about like Yoshi's transformation, physical transformation from being Beast of Burden in the first in Super Mario World, and then Yoshi's Island, into a more anthropomorphic being who can act as a sports star. I think in doing research for this that Mario Kart 64 is the first time where like Yoshi changed from being dinosaur-like with like small T-Rex arms to being more human-like. So like standing more upright instead of being bent over. His arms are long.
Sure.
Sitting. Yeah. But also, as I was like looking into this, trying to figure out exactly when Yoshi made that transformation, I stumbled across something else that was new to me, and so I wanted to talk about it. According to Yoshi's creator, Takashi Tezuka, Yoshi is a turtle.
What?
Now, there is obviously
what?
There's a lot going on here, right? Because in the Western localizations and like the US localizations, Yoshi has always been a dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
And in Japan, it's a little less clear. The Japanese word for dinosaur contains the character for dragon. And so like he like sometimes has been referred to as a dragon. On the official bio for Yoshi in the kids section of the Japanese Nintendo website, it reads, quote, "Even though there's a shell on his back, the saddle is a shell, we actually don't know whether Yoshi's a dinosaur or a turtle." So Nintendo is hedging its bets a little bit here, but
casting some doubt. Yeah.
But Tezuka, not so much. So in an interview with Nintendo Dream, which is the Nintendo magazine in Japan, for the release of either Yoshi's Crafted World or Woolly World. Hold on, Crafted World. This was for the release of Crafted World. There's this interview as translated by Nintendo Everything, and this is what it says. Nintendo Dream asked the question, "We talked about this in a previous interview for the SNES Classic Edition, but Yoshi is a turtle, isn't he?" And Tezuka says, "Yes, I had to always insist that he was a turtle." Parentheses, all laugh. "Because we wanted a character that wouldn't feel out of place in the Mario universe, we decided on a turtle. It might have been Miyamoto's idea, but I'm not entirely sure." The Nintendo Dream follows up, "I think because the message you can read at Yoshi's house says Super Dragon, people thought he might have been a dinosaur." And because, again, the Japanese word for dinosaur contains the character for dragon. And Tezuka says, "I think we wrote that without really thinking about it too much." So,
which I think that's the heart of it, is that I think we developed this without thinking about it too much, is really what's happening here.
Yeah, in the interview for the SNES Classic Edition, where they're talking about it, basically what he says is like the genesis of it was that they needed like something that could fit within, like that made sense within the Mushroom Kingdom, right? And there aren't really dinosaurs, and so that's where it was like, oh, it's kind of like a type of Koopa, so it would have a shell. So Yoshi's kind of like a turtle. But Tezuka's pretty like upfront that he insists that Yoshi is a turtle.
I mean, the part of it that I definitely do buy is that Yoshi is kind of like a turtle. Like, there are definitely turtle-like qualities. His face is very turtle-y. Like,
is it?
Especially in the original Super Mario World. Like, his face, if that face were like coming out of a shell, you'd be like, that's obviously a turtle. You wouldn't question the head for a second.
Well, here's also an interesting wrinkle. Is in the user
turtles don't wear shoes. That's just all I'm gonna say.
In the user manual for Super Mario Kart in the United States, Yoshi's referred to as a dragon. So none of this makes any sense.
Well, the simple fact of the matter is he's a Yoshi. Like, we know this, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, on yeah, and the quote unquote canon of all this changes all the time. Like in the SNES manual for Super Mario World, the story that's setting the whole thing up is that Yoshi was trapped in the egg that you find him in by like Bowser and his minions. So it's not like a natural place for Yoshi to be. He's trapped in there, and Mario like breaks him out. And obviously, I think that has gone by the wayside.
Because we've seen Yoshis lay eggs. They use them for weapons all the time,
Mm-hmm.
which is maybe another thing we don't have time to unpack at the moment. Mark, what do you got for Z?
My Z is zany peripherals. And I think
my Z may be one of those zany peripherals.
so. This was definitely most acute in the Wii era, in my opinion. Some favorites include the sports pack that you could buy like in tons of different configurations that were like plastic, like generally very cheap, like plastic peripherals that you could snap your Wiimote into to transform it into like a tennis racket, a table tennis paddle, a golf club, and more, like a very little actual utility. I saw some that were like boxing gloves, where basically you put like like they're huge because you put the Wiimote like in the glove. A plastic football of unknown utility, like the buttons could pop up where the laces are, but what you're
But you're not
supposed
gonna
to
be able to
do
push
with
that
it,
B button.
like I don't know. Also, there was a NHL game, a hockey game called NHL Slapshot from EA Sports that included like a stick that's kind of like the size of a Guitar Hero guitar, where you would put the Wiimote in there, but then also the nunchuck, so you could be like controlling it using the nunchuck and swinging the stick back and forth, and you would have to do things like bring it up and like cross it when you were getting into a fight, or like to brace against somebody.
I tell you what, anyone that wasn't Wii Sports was wasting their time making sports games with Wii controllers. None of that makes any sense.
It was just a weird. It was definitely, I feel like, the peak of like third party peripherals. Because there were not Nintendo related, but there was that like, I think it was a Tony Hawk game, like an infamous Tony Hawk game that had like a skateboard peripheral that you were supposed to like control it with, that was famously notoriously bad.
Yeah, I believe that's Tony Hawk Ride. Yeah, Ride has the skateboard controller. And that came out right around the same time as DJ Hero.
Mm-hmm.
I remember because the boxes are the exact same size, and both either of these games will cost you $129.99. Like that was it was one of those things where you got to be like, do you start with the price point? And you're just like, that's how much people will pay for a kind of okay game with a ridiculous peripheral.
Man, just like apartments and dorm rooms and like house living rooms just cluttered with so many of these like plastic peripherals.
Yeah. So I guess maybe my zany peripheral, my Z, is the Zapper, the NES Zapper. The gun that came with the system that, or at least it did if you had a pack-in that included Duck Hunt. And I think it is meaningful and important that the game that Nintendo pushed forward to support the Zapper wasn't Hogan's Alley, which is a cop shooting, like shooting range thing, or any of the other games where like the gun is a weapon. The gun is a tool in a hunting game in Duck Hunt. And I think Nintendo's always been a little bit like, looking back on my experience with the Zapper, it kind of blows my mind that there was like a Nintendo gun that like it just seems so antithetical to Nintendo's values at the time and now and every time in between. But the Zapper is such an iconic piece of hardware. We had that original gray Zapper. Mark, did you grow up with the gray one or
No,
with
we
the
had the
one?
orange one, the one that they like started issuing to make it look less like a gun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, which is smart. Like, make that thing look less like a gun. Kids don't need to be holding real guns or anything that looks like a real gun. But yeah, it's such an iconic part of what playing the NES was, and it's sad to me how that is so locked now in time, because like light gun technology doesn't work on modern TVs. So like we just don't see that anymore. Duck Hunt as a franchise sort of lives on in the Smash Brothers character that is the Duck Hunt dog and duck combo. Duck Hunt was released on the Wii U eShop a couple years ago, and I believe you play it either with like touch controls or something. But like you can't play it with like a regular NES zapper, which is the real shame. Thing is so simple. Like to your point about the weird zany peripherals from the Wii era, how many like buttons you still need to try to manage as you are pretending your your Wii remotes are boxing gloves. There's just one button on the zapper, and it's the trigger. That's it.
Yeah. And I guess the Wii was kind of the last hurrah for Nintendo zappers, because that's when we got the Wii Zapper, which of course, whenever we bring it up, I'm obligated to say was packed with Link's Crossbow Training, which is the 5th best-selling Zelda game of all time.
In the United States.
In the United States. You're right.
An important caveat. Mark, we did it. We've done A through Z. I think these are phenomenal lists and have highlighted maybe even more than any of the other like ABC lists that we've done, the true breadth of like Nintendo's weirdness. We go as far back as 1967 here, Mark. 1967. That's Mad Men times. All right, let's close this out. If anyone has any strong Nintendo sports memories that don't quite fit into the ABC format or whatever, or if us talking about the games and hardware and stuff that we have been talking about triggers anything for you, you can always write into us at Nintendo Cartridge Society at gmail.com. Mark, when we started this, I think we were both a little bit nervous to be like, oh, there's not maybe a lot here that we are like super familiar with. But obviously, there's enough that we find interesting or that we did have fun with. That we had enough.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun, like kind of like having to do the research.
Yeah, doing the research is fun too. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Nintendo Cartridge Society. Remember, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. If you like the episode, please share it on Facebook or Twitter or wherever you share stuff. We appreciate it when you do. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Patrick_Ellers. Mark is at MKE Mitchell, and the show is at Nin Cart Society. We also have a Facebook page, which is just Nintendo Cartridge Society. Olivia Duncan made our logo. Our theme music is provided by 8-Bit Betty. You can get more of his music by going to 8bitbetty.com or by listening right now. For my co-host, Mark Mitchell, this is Patrick Ellers saying thank you for listening.
My name is Will Hines, and I am a ghostwriter, meaning I write other people's books for them. And I have a podcast called I Will Write Your Book, which are recordings of my meetings with my eccentric clients, such as a woman blocked after one sentence of a children's book about her dogs, a romance novelist who dislikes sex, and a man proud of having sampled everything in his local grocery store. This podcast has been described as fully improvised, played by some of the best comedians on the planet Earth. Hey, that's pretty good. That's I Will Write Your Book on Campfire Media.
Campfire.